Hey viewers and friends, Andrew back at you with another slasher review, and today I'm going to be reviewing Cut, which is a Australian slasher movie from the year 2000. So the story behind this one is it starts off with a low budget slasher movie being filmed and everything's going really well. The date is 1985 and yeah, we see some of the movie being shot. Then we see the killer going absolutely insane and killing off some of the cast and crew of the movie, including the director. The main character, she manages to survive, supposedly kills off the killer, and the project gets completely abandoned. Then it skips ahead several years to a group of film students, and the main character, Ruffy, who turns out to be the new director, she's pretty obsessed with this movie and she really wants to get it up and running again with the rest of the film students and finally see the project completed. The film teacher is not keen on the idea at all. He was involved with the original print, he knows everything about it. There's been a massive curse put on the film apparently, and the film has been shown a few times, and each time it's been shown all the viewers have died. So there's a big taboo around the original movie, Hot Blooded, so yeah, for several years it's pretty much been just abandoned. But the film students manage to talk the teacher into it and they get the original print and decide it's time to go back to the original location, get the one surviving main character from the film involved again, and actually see the project finally completed. So that is pretty much the main storyline running throughout this movie, and then of course you throw in the return of the killer and you have yourself a slasher film. So what I thought of this movie, well, I pretty much knew nothing about this movie going into it. Completely blind one for this one. I actually got it via a trade from Aussie 80s, and as soon as he mentioned that he had an Australian slasher movie that I'd never seen before up for trade, I jumped on it. I didn't really bother looking too much into the movie. I wanted to go into this one completely blind, and I honestly wasn't too sure what to expect. He said that it was a pretty good movie, so I thought, it's probably going to be at least pretty decent for me. Considering I'd never heard of it before and it was a fairly low budget movie, I knew that going into it. I wasn't expecting too much, to be completely honest, especially in terms of the kills, but it turns out this one is a hidden gem and I absolutely loved it. So we're going to start with what I thought of the storyline and characters. Well, we all know that slasher movies aren't known for their really in-depth and awesome storylines, but I've got to say this one's slightly different. Especially for a slasher, the storyline and characters are pretty deep in this one. Obviously not as deep as other films, but we're talking about a slasher here and implemented brilliantly. They brought the character development, the storyline and the slasher portions of this movie together so well. I was so impressed with it. We're all horror fans and it was really fun to actually see a horror movie getting made within a movie. Really well done, and the characters were all really good. The character of, Molly Ringwald, she played the main character and she was actually the only known actor or actress in this film. The rest of the cast were pretty much unknowns. I wouldn't really say that she felt massively out of place, but it was kind of weird seeing her in this movie. I haven't seen her since the 80s in movies like The Breakfast Club and 16 Candles, so it was kind of strange seeing her in this one. She did play her character really well though. And then, as I said, the rest of the cast were unknowns, which I always think is a good thing when going into a low budget horror movie. And I enjoyed the rest of the cast. I wouldn't really say that they were your traditional cliche slasher characters, which I thought were good. They were all very similar in personality and pretty much just your average group of people, which I thought was pretty cool. So no complaints in terms of the characters. As I said, I love the story. I thought it was done really, really well. You sort of realise why Ruffy is so determined to actually see the movie completed as the film goes on. That's as far as I'm going to go. It's kind of the major plot point, so obviously I don't want to spoil it. Now, in terms of the killer himself and the kills, frigging awesome. The killer reminded me a lot of the original Michael Myers. The killer in this was a lot more brutal, but what I mean by it reminded me of Myers is the on-screen presence that he had in a lot of shots. You know, he was very menacing, very creepy, and you know, it reminded me a lot of the original Michael Myers. In fact, there were a lot of really well done horror homages thrown throughout the entire film, which I thought was done really, really well. You know, they weren't forced at all. There weren't a lot, but they were sort of subtly thrown in throughout the movie, which I thought was like a nice little touch to it. It had I wouldn't say it had an 80s vibe to it, because it didn't, but it kind of did feel like an 80s slasher to a degree. But yeah, the killer was awesome. He like wore the overalls like Myers, and then he had a really creepy looking mask, like white mask, no hair, and then stitched up lips, which looked really, really cool. I loved the way the killer was implemented. You know, there was the character that was actually playing the killer for the movie that was being shot, and then the real killer appeared. So for a time you didn't really know whether it was the real killer that you were seeing or the guy dressed up in his character. Eventually it does get revealed that there is a killer on set, but that was a pretty cool touch, and you know, something a little bit interesting, because you really didn't know what was happening. The kills were all awesome, and it was probably my biggest concern going into the film, that the kills may be fairly mediocre, but boy was I wrong. Pretty much all my favourite kills were included in this movie. Well, not all of them, but a lot of them, and they were all varied. All the kills were different, which I think is really important for a slasher film. So yeah, loved the kills. I wouldn't say it was gory, but the effects were really, really good, especially at the end of the movie when the killer dies off. That is done really, really well. But yeah, all the kills were awesome. They looked great. I think all of them were on screen except for one, so that was cool. And yeah, I loved the kills. There are a couple that kind of looked a little bit silly, but other than that, really, really awesome kills. And the body count was good, pretty high, pretty satisfying, and well spread out throughout the movie as well. So yeah, all round, awesome movie, loved it. The ending, I was so impressed with it, the way the killer died. Really different and original compared to most other slashers out there, and I thought that was really, really well done, and it was definitely needed. They needed something different to set this movie apart from just, you know, your everyday average slasher movie, and they certainly did it with everything, with the storyline, the characters, the kills, the killer, and especially the death of the killer at the end of the movie. I'm not really going to spoil too much, but when the real killer actually gets revealed, he's kind of a Freddy Krueger ripoff, but that's sort of all I'm going to say. But yeah, the effects, especially with the death of the killer, looked awesome. So for a low budget slasher film from Australia that I had never ever heard of before, I was completely satisfied with this one. I thought it was great, so I highly, highly recommend it. Especially to the likes of Moods and One Eye Xmas 1. If you've never seen this one before, I definitely highly recommend it. I think you'll both love it. This one is only about $8 on Amazon.com, so really, really cheap and definitely worth the price. For my Australian viewers, I definitely recommend it. It's a good low budget slasher movie, and easily the best Australian slasher movie that I've come across, which isn't saying much. I think there's only like about 4 or 5 Australian slasher movies, and I own 4 of them. I've seen them all, and yeah, this is easily the best one. But I thought it was great and highly recommend it. So I'm going to give Cut an overall score of 3.5 out of 5, so 3.5 out of 5. Definitely recommend it. Yeah, I had a total blast with it. So that has been my review of Cut. Thanks a lot for watching.